Hey, everybody. Thank you for tuning into season 5 of Think Theo, where we talk about grief and everything about grief. And today we are talking to Delilah. Is it Maly?
Yes.
Maly, and she's from Colorado.
Mhm.
And they've got some different laws there. We were just talking about this. She and I were talking on the phone, but I met Delilah through David Kessler's Grief Educator certification class. And I met a lot of people through that, but I reached out to her, she reached out to me, and she and I share something that we wish we didn't share, but we share suicide in our immediate family. And Delilah lost her 22-year-old son. He took his life. It's only been not even 2 years ago, but I'm going to let her talk about that. And then we're just going to talk about suicide, and we're going to talk about the stigma around it. And I'm going to share some research stats that I've got on suicide. I'm going to tell you a little personal story about me when I found my dad that morning that I've never told anybody. And I want Delilah to share with us just kind of the mission and what she's doing right now. But to do that, I've got to let her talk, right?
Mhm.
But I want to go back to that day and what happened, and then have you just give us you were telling it so eloquently over the phone. So just tell everybody what it is that happened in your life.
So thank you again for having me. And I hope with anything that I share is going to be helpful to anybody that's listening. Um, so it really kind of goes back to grief in itself, and that it being a part of the mental health aspect that's not necessarily acknowledged or understood. My son had lost his best friend April 1st of 2023, who also took his life by lethal means with a gun. And it was very, very devastating to him. And for a whole year, I really watched him, I don't want to say disintegrate, but he struggled very much with the mental health aspect. And when we talked about it, he'd be like, "Well, you don't understand, mom. You just don't understand." And now that I'm going through it myself, I do understand. And I understand how society does not accept this as being a serious mental health aspect of losing somebody due to death by lethal means or suicide. Um, so it was April 20th, 2024, when I'd been messaging back and forth with his girlfriend of him struggling. Um, he had gone through many attempts to get help throughout the year on his own. Um, and like I was telling you before, August 13th of 2023 was a very serious day where he had a breakdown, and he is a CCW carrier, and he was saying that he was going to kill himself uh, walking around. So I made a 911 phone call. Um, on that day, when the police arrived, I talked to the police officer by phone and let him know that he was struggling mentally. He had been taking Xanax to kind of help him out. And they were like, okay, well, we'll get him help. And there was some information and links and body cam video that I did send to you that I did not get until after I had requested it from the attorney after he had passed away, but it had stated that he was not in a good mental place and that he did need help and that he felt very grief stricken. He was very guilty over this and that he couldn't get any help. He couldn't find the right help. And so this was my plea as a mom of saying, hey, my son is not in a good place. We really need to get him help. This is why we're calling. Like, this is a very serious situation. Unfortunately, that did not play out. But here in Colorado, there's an EPRO law. A lot of people uh, misunderstand what that law really is for. Small town politics, good old boys mentality of like, you're trying to take our gun rights away from us. That is far from the truth. That is far from what that law states. It's there to implement for law enforcement or anybody to be able to say, hey, you're not in a good mental place. Um, we are going to basically force you into a emergency mental health hold or do a mental health evaluation, and maybe get you on the road to help you navigate this. Uh, because as you may have experienced with grief in itself, there is no manual. It's messy, it's ugly. Nobody tells you what's going on with you. You feel like you're crazy. You feel like you're losing your mind. It's lonely. Uh, and it's in the very fact of what I watched. And I didn't realize that's what I was witnessing. I just knew he needed help.
And everybody, that EPRO law, it stands for Extreme Risk Protection Order.
Yes.
Extreme Risk Protection Order. And that those words make sense.
Yeah, absolutely. When you're struggling mentally. Um, and I absolutely get it. I am working with a CNC program out here in Colorado. And one of the pillars is by lethal means. And some of those actions of post and prevented on suicide is let's leave some pamphlets, let's leave some gun locks, and in hopes that it's going to prevent suicide, which those are not impactful or helpful in an aspect. And even I think that we need more education and better understanding of the EPRO law, that it's there to protect people that are struggling, that own a gun or have access to a gun or can get guns. Because as I was explaining in our group, I was like, there's nothing stopping me from going to our local Shields, purchasing a gun and shooting myself in the head in the parking lot. Like there's nothing that's, I don't know, just impactful to help be in the preventative, even after the post. But that morning I had been talking to his girlfriend who was staying with him the night before, and he woke up and he was in a very depressive state. There was a situation of bullying that was happening downstairs. It was shortly after the 1 year anniversary of his best friends. There was a lot of a storm building up, and his neighbor had gotten him some more Xanax because he wasn't getting the right help from any of our local mental health facilities or even the BetterHelp, the 988 line. None of that stuff was working. So he had taken enough that he had blacked out, and it was very, very sad. And so at this point, I was talking to her like, well, how do I call the police? Because our last interaction of trying to get intervention from the police department was unsuccessful. So how do we make it to it is successful this time without any kind of criminal charges? Because nothing that's happening is criminal. And before I knew it, it was 11:57 a.m. and she sent me the text message that he did it. I was just kind of like in shock of like, what do you mean he did it? He's gone. Uh,
Wow.
yeah. So she was there. She had to witness it. And then when we went down there, it was no going to the hospital. The trajectory after reading the autopsy report, it was immediate death. And then, of course, they send a victim's advocate. A victim's advocate isn't something that should anybody that's not who you should send to a situation like this. It should be a survivor's advocate. And so that's why I'm hoping that through this grief education that I can go in and kind of help educate our victims advocate, our police department, our sheriff's department, maybe even be that person that shows up for somebody that has to endure what we've been in. We've just been entered into a whole different world, into a club that we can never cancel our membership to. Nobody understands. You don't understand what's going on with you. You're in a fog. You don't know what's happening next. Um, I just remember that the victim's advocate was telling me, well, you're going to have to find a crime scene cleanup to come and clean the mess up upstairs. Like, that's the last thing you want to hear. And then watching your son come down in a body bag and kind of wondering what the next steps are as you're in shock of like, this can't be happening.
Yeah.
You feel like you've done.
I'm
No,
sorry. Are
go
you
ahead.
in contact with your son's best friend that took his life with his family at all?
I am in contact, but we, they're they're Spanish speaking. His mom's more of a Spanish speaking, so there's like a little bit of a language barrier. But he was very much part of our family. He was always over at our house all the time. He was a great kid. And that was one of the hardest things is to take him and his other friends to the funeral and to the graveyard. And I was like, please, I don't ever want to go through this again. So, but to watch those kids grieve and mourn over the viewing of the body, it was hard, and I felt for the mom. And now here I am. I'm the mom that's going through it myself.
Right. You know,
Um,
you brought up something I wanted to talk about, which is society's view of suicide. And
mhm,
so, right after I found my dad, so just to give you real quick, because I don't want to talk about me, I want to talk about you. My dad took his life on Father's Day in 2022, June 19th. And I told you a little bit about the accident on the farm and his mobility. And he didn't have a he felt that he didn't have a reason for being here anymore, and he wanted to leave the farm the way he wanted to. And my dad was a retired minister. He'd been a minister for
mhm,
33 years of Bethel Bible Church here in our community.
mhm,
And just like I would have never dreamed in a million years that my dad would actually do this, although very early on after the accident, he had talked about it. But it had been 3 years. I'd kind of let my guard down. But when I found him that morning, in the quiet time where I was with him, the body, before the people got there, the emergency workers and the funeral home and the body bag, you brought that up. I remember seeing that.
mhm,
Before that all happened, I remember thinking, I can't tell anybody how he died. Just for a split second. And
mhm,
I'm an open book. I've written a book. I've got another book coming out in December. I'm an open book, but for some reason, and I know why now, because society, I felt like I had to be ashamed of that. And for me to feel that, that means it's pretty big in our society in America. For me
mhm,
to feel that little bit of shame that I can't tell anybody how my dad died. And then I thought, no, I definitely can tell them. And so now I'm like on the opposite of that. And I'm trying to share with everybody. My dad ended his life with a firearm. And,
mhm,
we'd taken all the guns out of the house after mama's accident. But then daddy's like, bring them back in. It doesn't matter. I'm not going to do that, and we let our guard down. But I now see how unhappy he really was. And
mhm,
so, anyway, with my dad, Delilah, it's different because I understand. So that's why sometimes I feel like I can't relate to another suicide survivor because I feel
mhm,
like I understood my dad's, and I know you just don't understand with your beautiful son. And
mhm,
but I do feel like that I do share something with you enough that we can talk about it. And society doesn't understand it. So they shut it out. They put the stigma on it. It's got a horrible connotative word, suicide. People just don't want to talk about it because they don't understand it. They're scared of it. And
mhm.
I just can't stand it. It just makes me so angry, which is why I did the research study. So I'm going to let you talk now, and I'm going to find that research stat real quick.
Yes, it is very, very true. There is such a stigma behind it. Again, because the lack of education and understanding. Grief is mental health.
Amen.
Such as
Amen.
yes,
It's the number one
absolutely.
reason we're in a mental health crisis is
Uh-huh.
grief. And
Yep.
if you research a lot of the people that have done like mass shootings, they've
Uh-huh.
experienced a loss and they
Yeah.
didn't know how to deal with it.
Yeah. Yeah. And that's one of the things that that we've been learning is that everybody's grief is their own grief. What is the worst grief that David always says is it's your grief. So the magnitude of that grief it could be very extreme for that one person, even if it was a loss of a pet, so to speak.
Right.
So we are to never compare. Um, but a loss of a child definitely for me, I do feel is the greatest loss. And is the hardest. But what I've learned through reading books and doing certifications and taking this class is because I wanted to understand what is happening to me because I feel like I'm losing my mind. I feel like life is different, time is different, everything is different, the way I get treated is different. Why? What is happening to me? And what I've learned is that from suicide, people who do follow through with that is it's in our brains that that pain has hijacked those chemicals in our brain, and after so long it wears it down, and they have nowhere to go with it. That's why they feel that they have nowhere else, else but to end their life. Which makes sense because I can kind of feel that on some days because as you know, the waves of grief are they can come in big tidal waves and some days they may be smaller waves, but when they're when they're constant and they're coming crashing at you, um, it's exhausting, and you do just want to be done. You want to be done with the journey. You want to be done with everything, because this isn't the life that you want. You don't want to be feeling this way. You don't want to be thinking this way. Um, so it's even knowing that, it's still very challenging. I know a lot of people will
Mhm.
ask me, "Well, how are you?" Well, I hate that question. I Well, how do you think I am? I've lost a child. Um, I feel that a more validated question is, "How is your day going?" I'm here for you. I can understand that maybe today might be a little bit more challenging than the other. I can see that. Can I offer you a hug? Because even asking, well, I'm here for you, or let me know what you need. Well, we don't know what we need. Like, if we did, we would instantly do it. 'Cause we're all looking for instant gratification of trying to feel better. If you could put it in a jar and put it on a shelf, or if you could take this pain from me for 5 minutes so I could have a break, because it feels like you're constantly drowning. And that's the way I try to explain it to people, is like, if you've gone swimming all day and you're muscles and everything, and you are depleted, and you've got this fog over your brain, but you're out there in the lake and you're trying to swim with a straw while you're extremely exhausted in all different ways. You jump back out to catch one breath, and then you're right back in it. It's so exhausting on so many different levels: mentally, emotionally, spiritually, physically, because the body keeps the score. Trauma sits within our nervous system as well. So that also then is just like a vicious circle that goes right back into that whole mental health aspect. So, one, we need to have better understanding of the EPRO laws that lie within Colorado, and it should be a nationwide type of thing. The other aspect is that suicide is a huge mental health issue, that we need how the policies and procedures, of how we help people, or get how we get them into to get help, should be done differently. Why are you seeking help? Did you just lose somebody to suicide? Yes. Okay, well, you're experiencing grief. We need to get you in immediately, because I think that within the first year, it is super important to establish a support system, to start building your toolkit,
Mhm.
so that way you have that, alongside you. And like I had told you before, that even on some days, the amount of education, the certification, the amount of support that you have, um, it is still extremely hard. And some days are still like, I don't want to do this anymore. Uh, so that first
Mhm.
year is super important, but let's make it more normalized. Um, so I want to, with this educator class that we're doing, is to become more of a survivor's advocate. Utilize the Compassionate Friends group, um, to create a survivor support group. Let's talk about it more. So with Ethan's initials, Ethan Nathaniel Dow, uh, I want to make it, end. Um, it would be educate, normalize, and destigmatize survivors and survivors' grief in honor and of Ethan Nathaniel Dow.
I
Uh,
love that. END.
yeah.
Okay, I'm
Um,
going to share this with you.
yes.
Recently did this research study with the Center of Generational Kinetics out of Austin, Texas.
Mhm.
And I'm telling you, 80, okay, out of 1,000 people that we had do the testing, or not, I don't want to say testing, but do the questionnaires, um,
Mhm.
80%, 80%, that's 100 people, there's 80 people say 80% of grieving Americans believe coping and recovering from grief is an overlooked part of mental health in America today. 80% of
Absolutely.
grievers believe it is an overlooked part of mental health today. Okay.
Hmm.
65% of grieving Americans believe our culture of dealing with grief makes it harder. Our culture makes it harder for them
They do.
to cope and recover. And then
Yep.
this one, 71% of grieving Americans say that today's culture may, oh, wait, that's the same one. Sorry. 71% of grieving Americans, and this is the part that's scary, have intentionally hidden their grief, loss, or tragedy from someone they love, including 80% of Gen Z. Gen Z folks are the 21 to 27-year-olds. Your
Yep.
son was how old?
22.
He is a Gen Zer. 71% have intentionally hidden their loss, their grief or their tragedy from someone they love, which would have been you, his mother.
Hmm.
And that's 80% of Gen Zers. He was in that
Yeah.
80%. He was
Yeah.
part of that. And
Yeah.
that is so scary, folks, because what happens when the Gen Zers have babies and they're not teaching them how to grieve?
Right. Yeah. Very
And
true. We do got to teach people on how to grieve and to normalize it and to break the stigma around it. Um, because even in my own experience, like you said it, people act like they're gonna catch what you have. Well, guess what? Nobody gets to escape grief. Nobody gets to escape death. It's all going to happen. And what we've learned in our educator class that back in the day that it was more normalized and how people would come around and support you and be more understanding of it. We do need to bring that back. And
Mhm.
a lot of that prevention of suicide rate will drop, I think, significantly if we change the policies and procedures within the mental health system or even in the law enforcement, how it's approached to make it more like, oh my gosh, I'm not afraid of you because I'm gonna catch it kind of thing, or uh, just to be more kind, compassionate, and understanding of somebody that is enduring such a tremendous loss is
I
super helpful.
right, your son was grieving so heavily. He
Hmm.
didn't know how to get help. That's in some other statistics that they don't know
Hmm.
how to get help. But it also wasn't really readily available for him. And
No. Because there's the cost of it, and if you have this type of insurance, you can't have this kind of treatment, which isn't okay. And so any attempts, and which I get it, after you've made so many attempts to try to get help and it's not the right kind of help, you're already completely exhausted. And so there you have a
yeah.
small window of time. I've seen, I've witnessed, I've experienced that you're able to find that kind of supporting help or even the right kind of therapy um, to help you navigate to get you to the next step so you can make it another day, so you can make it another month, till you can make it another year, until those waves aren't as extremely debilitating, so to speak.
Right. I'm so glad I'm talking with you. This is so good because you're in Colorado, I'm in Texas. I mean, we're not too far apart, but politically it's pretty far apart because y'all got that
Mm.
law. I don't think Texas will ever get that law. And I don't want to say they never will, but that's one thing that we can do amongst thousands of things. That's just one thing. But educating on grief,
Mhm.
educating. I've learned so much in this class, and I thought
Mhm.
since I've written a book on grief, since I've been through it, oh, I'm probably going to learn a few things. No, I've learned a lot. And
Mhm.
just by me taking this class, I'm thinking, you don't have to take this class or you don't have to be grieving just to take this class. I think this
Nope.
class would be so important for people that are not grieving. It should be given
Absolutely.
at school. It should be part of
Yep.
curriculum so that when your friend loses somebody or his grandmother
Mhm.
dies or one of his siblings passes, that the children know how to handle it better. Because I know how to handle death just because I grew up with a very strong foundation. My mom and my dad, church, and I was around death a lot because my dad was a preacher. So
Mhm.
I was around that. Of course, the way that my parents died, I wasn't prepared for, but
Mhm.
I just feel like, and I guess I'm trying to say a lot of things, or I'm trying to say one thing and it sounded like a lot of things,
Because it's
but
a lot. Grief is a lot.
it is a lot, and I guess if we just had to narrow it down, Delilah, let's just narrow it down right now. We have one thing that we can do. What's the one thing that we need to let people know out there that they can do to just not only better their own mental health, but to better the mental health of those around them? What's the one thing? I know what I would say, but what would you say is the one thing that people could take away from this podcast that they could do that's going to help better somebody's mental health, if not their own?
It's how to be with somebody when they're grieving.
That's exactly what I was going to say. How to
Yeah.
listen.
Yeah, how educate yourself. So like we had that one class about how do you be with somebody in grief? Educate yourself. Don't go and unlearn what you've learned about grief and relearn how to actually be there with somebody within grief. I think it would be super huge. And being kind and compassionate and understanding. holding that space for somebody when they're
Yeah.
going through it, because you think that it's exhausting for somebody else to witness it or see it. Think how we feel within our shoes. We're completely exhausted and would like a break ourselves. But when we have so many expectations from the world that puts so much expectations on ourselves, it makes it much more harder for us to even navigate through it. And we are so exhausted.
Yeah, and I like to say, I tell people all the time, you've got to give yourself grace in grief. You've
Mhm,
got to give yourself grace. If you can't make the certain function that you were supposed to make because you're grieving, it's okay. And you need to be easy on those people. People that are not grieving, listen to me. You need to just let it all go, because these people that are grieving, we can't handle it sometimes. And
mhm,
we just need, give us a break. Respect our boundary, but in that same, it's a slippery slope. Respect our boundary of letting us grieve, but every once in a while, it's nice to have you come in, and not
show
to
up.
come in with comparisons, and not to come in with your well intentioned advice, but to come
Mhm,
in with love. And the most memorable moments for me early on in my grief after my mom's accident are the people that would just come and just sit with me and my dad, and we didn't even say a word.
yep. Yep. Shooting out a text message, "Hey, I'm thinking of you today. Hey, I love you. Hey, remember to breathe today." I mean, that was one of the first things that I had to remember, is to remember to breathe, because I was holding my breath a lot, causing a lot of physical aspects to happen. So just, you're right. Just coming in, you can't fix us. There's
Mm-mm.
nothing that you can say or do that's going to make it better or to go away, but just to show up with that kind and compassion, just thinking about you. I'm going to sit here while you cry. I might even cry with you. I'm not even going to say anything. Just taking a different approach, a different perspective to perceive it differently, and not to be afraid of it. Um, let the uncomfortable become comfortable within grieving, because it's
I love
hard.
that. I love that. Let the uncomfortable become comfortable, because
Mhm,
we're very uncomfortable. But if you're there and you're sitting with us, it helps. It brings comfort. And
mhm,
just to have somebody there, my girlfriends came and stayed with me on a rotation, and I would go, they'd let me go sleep in the bed.
mhm,
And then when
yep,
I got up, they wouldn't say anything. They wouldn't
mhm,
say, "What do you want to do?" They would just let me go in the kitchen, get something to drink. And then eventually I would start talking, and I'd want to talk to them.
yep,
And they were there to
yeah,
listen. But,
yeah,
one of the main reasons I wrote the book on grief is because I felt unheard in my grief. And
mhm,
so that's what I tell people. If you don't have somebody to talk to, I mean, I talk to my dog all the time. Put it out on a piece of paper, write it
mhm,
out on a page, just get it out of here. You've got to get that
yeah,
grief out of you and into some ears, that somebody that will listen, maybe
mhm,
a local minister at a church or somebody. You've got to find somebody to get it out and put it
yeah.
on a page. You can write it out.
You can video journal too. There's a couple of times, because sometimes when I go to write stuff, like my mind goes blank and poof, everything that I had is gone. So I've done a couple of videos and I've gone back and I'm grateful that I have them. But absolutely, you need to find your safe people to be able to do so. I've been fortunate, like I told you, I had all the secondary losses after losing my son, and I have some really great people in my life who let me stay with them. And just as you said, like they'll let me, if I'm going to be in my room all day, I'm going to be in my room all day. If, I need to be around them and just sit with them and do nothing, then I've got that space to be able to do so too. So it's definitely not trying to force anybody to be a certain way throughout the day, because each day it's like ripping the band-aid off all over again. And it's a
Mhm.
whole set of different emotions and how we're going to navigate it. And again, if you're lucky enough to have uh, tools within your toolbox to try and utilize them, that's like knowing who you are, um, knowing, for me, I am a faith-based Jesus follower. So
Me too.
clean by that thread sometimes can even be the toughest challenge on a daily basis. But I just being down to the basics. I need to remember to breathe today. If I just even get out of bed to get something to drink and something to eat and I go back to bed today, be okay with that. But
Mhm.
also there are times day too where you have it's it's hard to learn to be okay that today was okay. Today I did more. Today I smiled. And sometimes that's hard too, because the guilt and the shame we deal with that we can pack onto ourselves is very hard to navigate. Whether that's, all the shoulda, coulda, wouldas, or again, today was a good day. Today, I enjoyed today. Um, I did more for myself today. Self care is a huge must. And
Yes.
sometimes that can become expensive as well. But it's absolutely 100% necessary.
I
A
love
couple of the
self-care. I'm addicted to self-care right now, and not anything that costs me money. I'm just like, I've quit eating as much sugar.
Mhm.
I try to
Yeah,
do yoga every day off YouTube,
yeah.
because that helps me remember to breathe.
Oh,
And,
100%.
you know,
Eating is important, and as we've learned, we're our food is so toxic within in America in itself. So learning to be able to eat and not go to that junk food, because that will add to your mental health.
you're right.
Because that serotonin is created in our bellies, right? And so it all feeds back to how we think, because of how we feel. That food's going to make us feel a certain way. So you're right. Knowing and having access to eating healthy, stretching, or your yoga or Pilates, or even just getting out and walking around the block.
Yes.
Shoot, some days it's just walking to the shower. Good job. Give yourself some grace. You did it. Good job. You know?
Exactly, exactly. Well, we only have about 5 minutes left, and so I
Perfect.
want to talk about Ethan. If you
Yeah.
don't mind,
I
tell us about him. Tell us about how he lived. Tell us about how he was as a son.
So he was a super amazing son. Of course, every mom's always going to say that about their own kid, but he was absolutely handsome. He had the best smile. He would light up the room. He was he had the ability to make friends to anybody, but he was also the person that would stick up for the person that was less fortunate or the person that got bullied. He liked to make music. Um, he was a very outgoing, in the moment type of person. Uh, he loved the old World War II aspect. Um, he had a really good voice for music, which I'm very fortunate that he's left that behind, so I can listen to that. Um,
Oh,
uh, he was just a beautiful soul, and he had such a huge impact, a bright light. And they always say that sometimes the brightest lights that are left here on earth when they leave, they're supernovas. And I believe he's such a supernova still, that light shining so bright down on and leading the way and being still impactful even while he isn't here. That's the type of person that he was.
he's just lighting you up from the inside. I can see it.
Yeah,
And you're
beautiful.
doing great things. And I love your name. I've always loved that name, Delilah.
Thank you.
Well,
Thank you.
I'm just so thankful that you agreed to be on the podcast. You didn't really know what it was. We barely met. We'd never spoken until right now.
Yes,
And
ma'am.
um we just knew that we shared one thing in common that we wish we didn't share in common, and that was our grief, and our
Yeah,
grief from losing our loved one to suicide, to taking their own life. And
yeah,
I'm so thankful we're here talking about it. And I know there's people that are going to listen to this and they're going to also have this, and they're going to be glad that we spoke up. Maybe they're not
hmm,
able to speak about it, but
yeah.
they're glad to hear and have that belonging feeling and that sharing feeling to let them know that they're not alone.
Mhm.
And,
Absolutely. Don't be afraid. Do not be afraid to talk about it. Speak up about it. One voice, one story at a time. And before we know it, hopefully it can be an impact and it can be a change. So for even one person, or even hopefully the whole world at one point in time, that we don't have to feel like we're an island of misfits. We don't feel like we have to keep quiet, change the way and the view of how to help somebody grieve.
mhm.
Education, loving people the way we're supposed to, what we're called to do,
Yeah, it's
even in
all
the
of
darkest times.
Yes, it's just about, if you've got that light within you, then you've got to shine it. You've got to go out and
Mhm,
shine it and help others. That's why we're here.
mhm.
We've got to help each other. We're all in this together. Nobody's getting out of this thing alive. So
Nope.
we've got to just be with each other while we're here. And I just thank you so much for being here. I hope we stay in touch. I've got your number. Um,
Yes.
and I just really appreciate you taking the time to talk to us. And I can just see his face. He is just smiling. He's very proud of what you're doing.
Thank you. Thank you so very much. And thank you for having me. And hopefully, I can help in the future be there. But I'd love to stay connected. So thank you
Yes,
again.
we are. Well, this is season 5. Have you back on season 6.
Heck yeah.
See what's happening. Well, bye from Texas. Thank you so much, Delilah.
Bye. See ya.
Bye.
Much love.
You too. Bye bye.
Bye.